Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Full and Thriving. Today, I have a solo show coming at you, and this is actually the first solo show I've had since giving birth in October, so I'm super excited about it. And I am currently planning an episode about that experience and becoming a mom and everything else. But before I write that, I actually wanted to get back into it talking about authenticity. So today's episode is called 7 Secrets to Being Your Most Authentic Self. And I'm really excited to talk about this with all of you today because when I was growing up, I used to think authenticity was related to almost like appearance, like, oh, I dress the way I want, I talk the way I want, I do the things I want. And yes, that is all wrapped up into authenticity. In fact, the definition of authenticity is being true to one's own personality, spirit, or character. So when you think about authenticity, it's actually a lot deeper than just how you express yourself in the external world. However, that is a big part of it. It really comes down to knowing yourself, trusting yourself, and being able to act in accordance to that deep knowing of who you are. So when I was in high school, for instance, I really was a genuinely happy kid, and I really believed that I was living authentically. However, thinking about it now that I'm in my 30s, I really wasn't. And I want to kind of dig deeper and say that sometimes being authentic is maybe easier to understand when you can get examples of what it is not. So, for instance, in high school, although there were parts of me that were authentic, like my giggly side, my fun side, I would say my love of fashion, all of that, there were parts of me that were not. For instance, I had trouble speaking up. I had trouble expressing negative emotion. I would follow trends kind of blindly. I would easily change my mind based on other people's opinions, like the opinions of my parents or my friends. And often I didn't check in with myself about how I felt about things. So I would often choose activities to do or even paths to take in life based on what I thought was right instead of what I felt was right. And so maybe you're like, this is annoying. I am authentic, but you just connected with what I said. Maybe you're in that position I was in where there hadn't been an in-depth look at who I was and what was truly going on in my inner world. Like I said, it's not just skin deep. It's actually very much related to yourself and knowing who you are and what you believe in and being able to claim your truth outwardly. And that can be extremely scary for so many of us to do, right? Because if you want people to like you, if you don't want to cause conflict, if you want to be seen a certain way, sometimes claiming your truth outwardly can be something you want to avoid, right? So being able to express your truth might be scary and it might be vulnerable, but this is really where authenticity comes in. So why is authenticity important? I truly believe that when you are not aligned with your true self, you lose yourself and you can wake up feeling like you're not living your own life, but actually maybe someone else's that was designed by, say, greater society. I also feel like authenticity can be the root of things like anxiety and depression. Of course, there are chemical causes and genetic causes to anxiety and depression. I don't want to minimize that, but I do believe that sometimes inauthenticity can be the root of mental illness because you will find yourself one day making choices that don't align with who you are, and living in that state can be really challenging mentally. So chronically living in a situation that you chose but you didn't want can be really hard. I know I've lived in that state for several years when I moved across the country for a relationship that didn't feel right. So mentally, it was one of the most anxious and depressing times of my life because of a decision I made that wasn't aligned with who I truly was. So sometimes our inauthenticity is actually unconscious to us because we haven't taken the time to really get to know ourselves. So bringing it back to what I said in the beginning, in high school, I thought I was authentic. Yes, there were some authentic parts of me, but again, my inauthenticity was unconscious to me because I hadn't taken the time to get to know myself and get rooted in that and live from that place. So today I want to talk to all of you about the 7 secrets to being your most authentic self. And we're going to start with number 1. So the first part of authenticity is being able to identify your values. So these are your personal values that matter the most to you. And I just want to give a caveat here. Your values will change as different phases of your life come and go. Some stay the same throughout your whole life, but it's okay. Some values change. So get really clear on what your values are today and make your decisions based on these values. Also, don't just pick values and put them on your list because you think they should be on your list. Or in an ideal world, you would be a better person if you put this on your list. So don't judge yourself based on your values. They are your values. There is no right or wrong answer to this question. And what I typically do is I will go to Google and type in list of values and image search different lists of values to get my ideas flowing. And I'd like to ask you guys to maybe connect with a top 5 list of values. And it's really funny because I remember when I was in college, we had to list out our values in my sorority at one of our chapter meetings. And I could tell in that moment, everybody was getting wrapped into values that they thought they should be living by. So the overwhelming majority of girls in the sorority voted for family, which makes sense. But I can also see how some people would feel almost guilty not saying family because they love their family, obviously, and they judge themselves if that's not their top value. I think another value was sisterhood. And if we're being honest, we were all in a sorority voting for values in front of our sisters. So, of course, sisterhood was one of the values. And everybody in the sorority voted for like these 2 values. Maybe there was another one like charity or something like that, where we were all taking the moral high ground because we felt like these were the values we should be aligned with. And if you take a group of 100 people, it doesn't make sense that all 100 people would have the same top 3 values. However, one girl in my sorority said her top value was learning. And all of us laughed. We were like, who are you? You're kind of a weirdo. And she was laughing at herself. And we're like, okay, that was strange. Why would you pick that? We started judging her. But looking back at that moment, she was the one being authentic. She was the one who actually knew herself, knew that learning was a value of hers that she cared about. And I didn't stay in touch with her, but I assume as she continued on into adulthood, she made choices where learning was the priority. And so again, practice picking your values and get very clear on what your real actual values are, not a list that you feel like they should be. For me, one value that keeps coming up in my life is fun. And sometimes I judge myself for that because fun sounds like I'm not a deep person. But in reality, that's who I am. I love to just kick it and have fun. And I should be making decisions based on what feels fun to me. I also find community keeps coming up. I have authentically chosen the path of being a community builder. And I also truly do value family. And that's why I decided to move back home to be close to my parents, to be close to Dan's parents, and all of my childhood friends who I am still very close to in this day. So again, identify your values. Don't judge yourself for what your values are, and don't pick values based on what you feel like they should be. Okay. By doing this, you will become a more authentic version of yourself. Tip 2 is stop asking other people for advice on small decisions and big decisions in your life. So what I want you to do, first of all, it is important to learn from others, seek wisdom, seek advice. Yes, I do want you to do this, but I need you to check in with yourself on a deep level before you go around asking and texting all of your friends about what they think and what they think you should do. So, for instance, if you're in a relationship that feels uncomfortable to you, or you feel unhappy, or something doesn't feel right, but everyone says, oh my gosh, this person is the biggest catch in the world. You're so lucky. You should marry this person. You should definitely stay with this person. But deep down, you don't really feel good about it. And when you think about your life in 20 years, do you get excited or worried? And if you were to stay under, that heavy influence of your peers, maybe you would make an inauthentic decision that hurts the trajectory of your life. So, before you seek the advice of others, please check in with yourself and almost make a decision first. And then when you approach people, be open to hearing what other people have to say. So know what you want. And this is really important because it also is about connecting to your intuition here. Oftentimes we have big decisions and we feel confused, but if we can click into our intuition, that will help us make decisions that are aligned with our authenticity. The third secret to being your most authentic self is to start properly identifying your emotions and expressing them truthfully. I work with clients all the time who, when we start working together, they were not given the tools to properly identify their emotions. In fact, most people only have a limited vocabulary around the emotions they are feeling. For instance, I can see that a client in front of me is dealing with some pretty complex emotions and having a really complex emotional experience. However, when I ask them how they're feeling, they are limited to the word sad or anxious. And if you find that those are the only words you can come up with, or you say, I don't know, which is something I hear a lot as well, I do recommend that you look at what I call the emotion wheel, and I can put a link in the show notes. But I ask you to, and I ask my clients to do this, is get familiar with the emotion wheel. It has, I'd say, over 100 different emotions on that wheel, and try to do little check-ins with yourself throughout the day. So maybe set a timer on your phone for every 4 hours or 3 hours. And when the alarm goes off, pull up the emotion wheel and write down a few emotions that you are feeling. And first of all, you'll start to broaden your emotional literacy in a way, or your emotional intelligence related to your feelings. And you might say, hey, I used to think that I was anxious all the time, but in reality, I was feeling X, Y, and Z. Do those check-ins, check in with how you feel. And then the key here is claiming that emotion, expressing it, and feeling it. When I say express your emotions truthfully, what I mean is you might actually have to communicate your emotions to someone else. So maybe bring them up in therapy or bring them up to someone you are living with who you trust, someone you love. You can call someone or express them via journaling or art or creativity. Maybe you need to punch a punching bag, but the emotional expression is part of the authenticity, because if you do not express them, they can get kind of trapped inside of you and you can feel worse. So authentically expressing your emotions is super important, and always allow yourself to feel freely. My fourth secret to being your most authentic self is connected to number 3. And this one is a little against the grain, or not as expected, I think. And that would be listen to and honor your anger. So first of all, anger is an emotion that so many of us have been taught to disown or disconnect from or shame ourselves from having it. But the truth is, anger is actually meant to be protective. And it usually is a signal that some sort of boundary has been crossed, or maybe you've been mistreated, or maybe for me, sometimes anger means a fear has come up and I'm getting into like my fight mode when it comes to fight or flight. And we are taught to suppress our anger because it can make other people uncomfortable. But in order to be authentic, I really do believe we need to start listening to our anger, because anger can be healthy. And of course, I don't want you to go expressing anger in a way that harms other people. You do not have to express your anger in a violent way. You can actually communicate your anger in a healthy way to the people who have hurt you or who have upset you, if you feel safe doing that. And being able to express that anger constructively will help you live a more authentic life, and it will also help connect you to more authentic relationships. Because if we don't express something like anger towards a family member or a friend, that relationship becomes inauthentic and it becomes almost muffled or stifled, because there's now some energy between you that you are hiding, that you are afraid to express, and that can hurt the quality and the honesty of that relationship. The fifth secret to being your most authentic self, and this one is actionable, so I hope that many of you can start doing this, would be journal more often. Because if there's one theme I want you to take away from this show about authenticity and how to become your most authentic self, is knowing yourself. I say this to my sister all the time, know yourself. And in order to do that, journaling can be extremely helpful, because if you get into a regular pattern of journaling or a regular routine, you will start to see themes coming up, values coming up, different thoughts that keep popping into your mind. And when you look back at this and reflect, you start to learn more about yourself. And if you find journaling kind of hard or you feel like you're being performative or perfectionistic with journaling, I want you to let go of your expectations around journaling. You don't need to have these profound aha moments every time you journal. In fact, you could do some free writing, which is essentially scribbling across the page whatever comes to mind, even saying something like, "This feels stupid, I don't know what to write," instead of just sitting there not writing. So, journaling is a really good tool to help you be more authentic because it unlocks this level of self-knowledge where you can know how you're feeling about a situation, know what your hopes are, know what you want and what your needs are. And you are actively giving yourself space to get clear on what is best for you and again, what you are feeling. This is something that even if you could take time to journal twice a week for 10 minutes, you will get so much out of it. Okay, the sixth secret to being your most authentic self is to start being honest. And when I say honest, I mean bold, okay? I mean being bold with your honesty with the people around you. Notice I didn't say brutally honest, okay? There is a part of me that's been brutally honest with friends and it's backfired. But what I'm saying here is be honest with people to the point where you are being direct and assertive while maintaining respect for that person. So honesty is about saying the hard things, saying the things that you are afraid to say, having more difficult conversations that you wish you could avoid, but you know deep down that if you don't, you will continue to feel inauthentic around that person. Remember, it is possible to express hard things to other people while maintaining your integrity and your kindness. And it's also totally fine to disagree with other people because being honest and expressing your truth is more important than maintaining a fake level of agreement around something. I also want to remind you that it's okay to ruffle some feathers sometimes. If you are honest and maintain respect for the person, it's not going to turn into this giant argument or fight, right? If you can stay calm, cool, and collective and express your feelings authentically and honestly, that will just strengthen your relationship. And my guess is increase the amount of respect that person has for you. And if anything, they might trust you more because you are a friend that's going to show up authentically in those difficult moments and be willing to have those hard conversations. Okay, and my final piece of advice, number 7, is that I want you to finally do the thing you've always said you were going to do that you haven't done yet. We've all heard ourselves saying the same things, whether that's moving somewhere new or trying a new hobby or changing careers, going back to school, learning a new instrument or a language. We hear ourselves saying these things to our friends and family members and partners, but we are letting our inner selves wait around for the right moment. So I want to remind all of you to sign up for that thing and finally take action towards doing whatever that is. And I find action is a great way to feel more authentic in your day to day. If you are authentic in your doing, you will feel more deeply connected to yourself. So one thing I really want to do right now is sign up for guitar lessons again. I used to play guitar. I think I spoke about it on my podcast years ago. I stopped, and honestly, every time I would go to a guitar lesson, I felt more connected to my true self because I love music and I love singing. And I was learning guitar so that I could connect with those two things. And it made me feel like I knew myself better whenever I picked up the guitar because I knew that I was doing something that I was choosing for me. I wasn't choosing it because I was, when I was a kid, I played violin and I loved violin. It was one of my most happy parts of childhood. But it was also because the school was telling us, you're in first grade now, pick an instrument, right? Now, as an adult, picking up a hobby that I genuinely know I authentically want to do is so important. I want you to make a list of the things you've always heard yourself saying you want to do and take action towards doing that thing. You will feel more deeply connected to yourself doing the things that you want, and try not to judge yourself. I feel like growing up, I would judge people for doing hobbies that I didn't understand. Like, for instance, now, if someone's really into like Renaissance fairs, there's a part of you that's like, oh, I judge that. And then there's a part of me that's like, wait, this person knows themselves. They embrace it. They think it's cool. In fact, this person is super cool because they're embracing something very authentic to them and something that intrigues them, fascinates them, gives them a sense of community and passion. And I have deep respect for people who choose things to do that might not be the most popular thing, right? So again, think about yourself, think about what would be on that list, and take action towards it. All right, my friends, that is it. That's all I have for you today. My 7 secrets for being your most authentic self. And I tried to create a mix of actionable items and reflective tools that you can do today to help you more align with who you are. And bottom line here is authenticity comes down to taking the time to get to know yourself on a deeper level and how you feel. It also comes down to being okay with being vulnerable with yourself, vulnerable in expressing your emotions, and being vulnerable towards the people you love and saying the hard things, and sometimes not always going with what everyone tells you to do. So anyway, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please take a minute to rate and review the episode. And please send me your feedback. And if you love listening to the show, I always love being tagged on Instagram so I can see who's listening. And I am grateful for all of you who listened to this episode today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening. So there you have it. Another episode of Full and Thriving in the books. I want to personally thank you for joining me in listening to today's show. And if you found value in this conversation, I would be so grateful if you could please take a moment to subscribe to the show and leave a review. Your support not only helps us reach more people who are striving to live their most full and thriving life, but it also allows us to bring on even more incredible guests with valuable insights that can change your life. Every follow, every review makes a huge difference, and together we can continue to grow this beautiful community. Thanks again for being a part of the journey, and we'll see you next time on Full and Thriving.